Hey guys, this is Mark. Today I'm at Ladew Topiary Gardens in Monkton, Maryland, and with me is Sue Myers, and she's the coordinator for the butterfly house. So, how you doing, Sue?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah, it is.
Butterflies flying, caterpillars crawling, so
yeah.
It's a great day.
Well, before we talk butterflies, maybe you could give us a little bit of a history about Ladew and what makes this place so special.
All right. It is a really special place. It was started by Harvey Ladew, who lived in New York City, and he was a socialite, a traveler, but one of the things he really loved to do was fox hunting, and we're right next door to the Hartford Hunt Club here. So he found this area wonderful for that sport, and he purchased the house here and this property, and he transformed it. Beyond the fox hunting, he transformed, renovated the manor house, and he created 22 acres of beautiful gardens, which are now under historical preservation. So we have 250 acres total here. So that includes the historic gardens, but also meadows, woodland, polo fields, farmland.
Wow.
There's a lot of area to explore.
So it's a lot more than just topiary gardens.
Yeah. A lot of people have the idea of very, formal gardens, but there's a lot more to it. The formal gardens are beautiful, but there's a lot of other things to look at.
The topiary gardens are some of the most prestigious or most famous in the whole country, is that right?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of topiary, growing sculptural artwork that's blended in throughout the different gardens. So that's fun to see, but also the whole way he designed the gardens, they're in garden rooms with different themes, okay, and the topiary are found within those. So, and the manor house too is really interesting and beautiful to visit. A lot of ponds on the property, frogs, snakes, fox, deer. It's a great environment for great habitat for all kinds of animals and fun things to see.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we're in the butterfly house, is that right?
Yes, that's it. Butterfly house has been here we're in our 6th summer now, and it's an all-native butterfly house. Okay. So we go out on the property with our large nets and we collect the butterflies and bring them in. Most butterfly houses are tropical butterfly houses where they purchase the chrysalis stage of the butterfly. Okay. And the stages of the butterfly are egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, and then the butterfly. So a lot of times they're getting those chrysalis in the mail, and they can kind of control what butterfly and how many they have in the house at the time. And the way we do it, going out and collecting the butterfly, we're much more in tune to what's happening outside. Obviously, if there's not a lot of butterflies outside, there's not going to be as many in here. So, but one thing that we can have is the plants that the caterpillars need, because they're local, the butterflies are local. We can plant everything, and we know what those caterpillars need to eat, and we can have the entire life cycle. So that's really fun. We really focus a whole lot of we should really be calling this the butterfly and caterpillar house, because the caterpillars are as much of the star of the show as the butterflies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of different plants in here that feed the butterflies at all different stages throughout their life, or butterflies and larvae and caterpillars and eggs and all that. What is the difference between, let's say, a host plant and a nectar plant?
So the host plants are the plants for the caterpillars, and caterpillars and that's what people don't really think about too much, feeding the caterpillars. One of the reasons we put this in is because a lot of people see a caterpillar and they think they need to kill it because it's eating their plants. Mm-hmm. Well, caterpillars eat plants. That's all they eat, and other insects eat plants, and we need insects and caterpillars. They're all, you might not like them in your yard, but you wouldn't have butterflies and you wouldn't have the whole web of life. They're so important to the whole ecosystem to have those insects. So the host plant is for the caterpillars. Caterpillars can be really picky eaters, or they're very selective. So some can only eat one type of plant. Monarchs only eat milkweed. Black swallowtails only eat things in the carrot family, parsley, dill, fennel, stuff like that. Pipevine swallowtail can only eat pipevine. So people don't realize that, and it goes to show you how important diversity is in the environment, because if you don't have lots of different plants, you're not going to have lots of different insects or butterflies or things like that. So the host plants for the caterpillars, and then the butterflies are not nearly as picky about the nectar that they drink from, the flowers. So you can, you have a lot of choices there.
a lot of people ask about butterfly bushes or buddleia.
Buddleia, yeah.
Are they a good thing to plant or a bad thing to plant, or any thoughts on that?
Well, we don't recommend it. It's a non-native plant. So native plants are plants that have been here for thousands of years and have kind of evolved with the insects and animals that have also been here for thousands of years. So they've learned to, they need each other in the environment. They co-evolved, yeah. So the non-native plants come over, and a lot of times they become very invasive, and that's what we're finding with the butterfly bush. The butterfly bush is also, it provides some nectar. We've heard that there's studies that show that the nectar of the butterfly bush is not quite as nutritious as other types of nectar, and they do, they can become invasive. So in some areas you might not see it as much, maybe right around you, but there are woodland areas. And the problem with that is that then they take over what could be native plants that are providing host food for caterpillars and other insects.
They take up the real estate for what really should be there to begin with.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. So, I hate to tell people love their butterfly bush.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, but there's just better things you could be planting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember going through Shenandoah National Park and down Skyline Drive and seeing a lot of butterfly bushes on the side of the road.
Oh yeah.
And thinking, oh man, that's really neat.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, isn't that cool? This is not realizing at the time that it was a non-native species.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a bummer when you
It is.
come to realize
Yeah,
that sort of
sometimes
thing,
the less you know, the happier you are.
Sure.
But no, it's good to be informed and do what you can for these insects, yeah.
And it's just good to know what you're working with specifically.
Yeah.
I think it's good practice in this.
Yeah, yeah. A good example, if you've ever heard of the book Bringing Nature Home by Doug Tallamy. He's a professor, I think, at the University of Delaware. It's a great book, and he did a study comparing Bradford pear with oak as far as the amount of caterpillars that use each one. So Bradford pear is a non-native plant, non-native tree, and oaks are wonderful native trees. So they figured out that it was something like 537 different caterpillars that used the oak, and there were 2 on the Bradford pear.
Wow.
So when you consider, what that's doing for the environment. Now, oaks are one of the top, or the top, host plant for all kinds of different moths, not just butterflies, but moths too.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between a moth and a butterfly?
There's about, if I can remember them, about 5 differences. Now, there's not one rule that holds true for any of them. A lot of times it's butterflies you see flying during the day, and moths are out at night. But we have a few day-flying moths that we collect and bring in here. The clear-wing moths are one of those. The antennas are often different. Butterflies are kind of straight with a little club at the end, and moths can have very comb-like antenna or just straight without the club, so sometimes that's the difference. Butterflies' upper and lower wings are not connected, whereas moths are. I think that is one reason why butterflies are more graceful flyers, in my opinion anyway. I don't know.
We've all seen the spotlight in the middle of the night with a moth flopping around, like not exactly looking like he knew how to fly in the first place.
Yeah. And I think I'm missing 2, but right now I'm not remembering what they are.
Basically, there's a handful of general guidelines, but there are some exceptions to the rule as well.
Yeah, and typically people think of butterflies as being more beautiful and colorful, but we have some really beautiful and colorful moths. Our largest moth in North America, the Cecropia, is just outstanding. It's beautiful. And you've, I'm sure, seen Lunas and some different moths.
We just had a Luna about last week. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And again, we had a spotlight out. We were looking for the dog.
Oh, that's the one.
And a big Luna moth came down. And that was definitely a sight to see.
Yeah. So, moths get a bad rap a lot of times because they're out at night and people don't get a chance to take a good look, or there's just a few moths that get into your clothes and eat your clothes, but there's about 120,000 different species of moths.
Oh,
wow. And so the majority are, great for the environment because they're caterpillars before they're moths. And caterpillars, along with butterflies, they're caterpillars before they're butterflies. They're a really important food source, particularly for birds. Songbirds in the springtime need a pair of songbirds need about 1,000 or more caterpillars every single day to feed their young.
Wow.
So when people put in wildlife gardens or bird gardens, they think of shrubs for berries, where you're putting out seed in the winter, but they need those caterpillars. So you need the host plants so that the caterpillars can eat, and that's bird food, really important bird food in the spring.
Very interesting. If you had to recommend to somebody in the Chesapeake area, let's say 5 good trees to plant for the sake of birds, wildlife, just what you just said, all encompassing, what would be some good recommendations for
trees?
For trees, yeah.
Oak would be number one. Wild cherry is a really great host plant. It's for a lot of different butterflies and moths. Tulip tree, we have a tulip tree over here. That's tiger swallowtail and a few of the other, let's see.
We call them tulip poplars on our farm.
Tulip poplars, yeah. Hackberry is a good tree, not as popular as some. Willows are really good as a host plant. Sassafras, little smaller of a tree.
So does weeping willow follow into that willow category?
Weeping willow would work. Yeah, I mean, for some trees and shrubs, you know, it's just the natives, but there's others that even are non-native that'll provide food for some of these species. Yeah. Dogwood, maple, you know, really a lot of the main natives. Birch.
Do you hear many questions about the Baltimore checker spot? Butterfly.
I mean, sometimes we get school kids in here that might not know much about butterflies at all, but they've learned about the Baltimore checker spot because it's the Maryland state insect.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful butterfly. Unfortunately, it's endangered mainly because of its host plant is it's a wetland plant, the white flowering turtlehead.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, you can't really find it in many nurseries. A lot of nurseries sell the pink flowering turtlehead, not the white flowering. But it's a wetland plant. We've lost a lot of our wetlands, unfortunately, and also the deer eat the plant. So another thing I think could be a reason is that they lay their eggs in clusters, and then they form like a webbed nest. So I feel like if a homeowner saw that and didn't know what it was, they would probably cut it out thinking, it's killing my plant, I need to get rid of this. That's just a guess. And I think climate change is having an effect too, because you're seeing the Baltimore checker spot further north. It's out in western Maryland more now, and it's up in PA, but not as much in Maryland.
How about that? It's just interesting how delicate of a balance all this is. When you consider the symbiosis and the intricate connections between things.
Yeah, I mean, the timing of things, you know, the temperatures, these guys are very sensitive to temperatures. The butterflies can't fly in under 55 degrees.
Really?
And also when you think about what they're eating, you know, how their interactions are so closely tied, like you said. If something is not coming up, it's coming up later, and it's missing the timing of when that caterpillar is in that stage, you know. If they're off, that's not going to work very well. For what you're talking about, could this be an issue with people planting milkweed per se and how they care for it? Different times of the year and when it's supposed to be there and not, and things like that, or is it pretty much just good practice to plant milkweed in general? I think it's good to plant milkweed, I mean, there's a study that came out this year that talked about people raising monarchs in their home and how it could be affecting their migration, and maybe they're not as well equipped to migrate because they have been raised inside. So that's a really new study. So they're recommending, if you're going to be raising monarchs, then to do it in as natural of a setting as possible, you know, maybe in an outside porch or outside on your plants with a netting. And people do it, they're very well-meaning, and they're trying to protect the caterpillar from parasites or other predators and give it a chance. And people are and still do, you know, really get into it and are raising a lot. And I think the recommendation is, you know, just raise a couple or do it for educational purposes.
Sure.
And kind of let them do their own thing, let nature take its course.
Sure.
But planting milkweed is a great thing, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the more that people can do in their homes, in their yards, with native plants and wildlife plantings and things, the better, you know.
So I guess the main thing, one of the main things is before you're going to get rid of something in your garden that may be considered a pest or it looks ugly or gosh, what is that, is just do your research, figure out what you're looking at, because it could be something in some cases that may be very endangered. Yeah, what was that one that just flew past? I don't know if the camera caught that.
That was a cloudless sulfur.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous butterfly.
It's like lime, yellow, green.
Yeah, we don't see it very often. We see it this summer because we have a lot of partridge pea in our meadow, and that's its host plant. And that plant kind of comes and goes in our meadow, so this is a good year for it, and that's why they're here.
How about that?
Yeah.
So we're basically, essentially in a screened-in greenhouse, or a greenhouse covered with shade cloth, essentially. Is that right?
Yeah.
What is the purpose for having the screen? Is it more to make this sort of an educational setting, or does it protect the butterflies, or what is...
Well, the butterflies wouldn't stay in if we didn't have a screen, so that's one thing, you know. But it's not glass. If that's a lot of butterfly houses are glass, so we are trying to simulate as natural of conditions as possible. The whole top comes off in November when we close the gardens for the season, and then it goes on in the spring. But you know, the rain can come through, the sun, the wind. So we're trying to. It's not perfectly natural. We don't have birds in here, you know, one of their biggest predators, but we do want people to see the butterflies and the caterpillars, so it's kind of a balance. We're trying to do the best we can, you know, while educating people and keeping some butterflies, but you know, you're not swarmed by butterflies in here like you are in some other places. But hopefully the educational pieces, we have volunteers in here whenever we're open, usually 2 volunteers at a time, so to show people where the eggs and the caterpillars and the chrysalis are, because if people come in and there's no one here to show them, they'll just walk right by, you know. One nice thing about this, it gets people to slow down, you know. We're all so busy and rushing around with everything that you really have to slow down if you want to look for a butterfly egg or a caterpillar under a leaf or something.
They're hard to spot. Yeah.
So, and it's good for us all to slow down a bit.
It's amazing how much activity can be going on in such a small space.
Yeah.
One of the people I was here with earlier was walking me through and pointing out a different host plant where the egg was, and a tiny little larvae. I mean, you know, maybe a few millimeters in length, and you just don't know what you can't see, I guess.
Yeah. And it's not until you take a good look, and it changes week to week in here, which makes it really fun too. So
that's interesting.
You know, all these different species are kind of doing things at different times. So might be coming out of a chrysalis, you know, this week, and laying eggs next week, whatever.
So do you guys keep any sort of journal or documentation of all this?
We try. We have a group of volunteers, we call it Cat Squad, and they come in and help us manage the caterpillars. That's probably one of our biggest challenges in here. Each butterfly lays hundreds of eggs, and we can't have enough food for hundreds of caterpillars, so, you know, over and over and over again. So we collect the caterpillars when we have too many, and not enough food, and we put them out on the host plants, out in the meadow or in the gardens, the food that they need. So we try to keep track of that, and we keep track of the butterflies we're bringing in, and we haven't really done much with that data. We're really kind of too busy trying to keep everybody alive and happy in here, but yeah, we try to keep notes.
Basically, a lot of what we see inside of here, I'm also seeing in the surrounding property around us, which you call the meadow. How do you guys take care of this meadow? Do you mow it down at the end of every season, or is there any kind of structured practice in how you keep this from turning into forest, essentially? Yeah,
it gets mowed usually every March, and every 5 years or so they might burn it. Now they haven't. I've been here 6 years and they haven't burned it in that 6th year. Hopefully this winter they're going to give it a burn, which is good for the soil, and it's just a different way. Some plants, actually, the seeds need fire to open up, things like that. So fire every now and then is good. We spot mow too. We just mowed some areas of really invasive plants. We had some mugwort and loosestrife that got mowed down. So we're just, you know, we don't have anybody really that's their job to take care of the meadow. So we're just doing it as we have time.
Sure.
But
and a lot of this doesn't take you know, a rigorous approach as if I'm going to try to bring butterflies in. It sounds like I don't need to, you know, read an encyclopedia and dedicate 3 days out of my week to do this.
Yeah, no, not that much. You know, if more people had meadow and less lawn, you know, that would be wonderful. But it's not like it's no maintenance at all. There is some maintenance with meadows, mainly because of the invasive plants that just fly in from other places. Yeah.
You got to get them out of there.
Yep.
As best as you can.
Yeah.
When you got time to do it.
Yep.
A question I get a lot from people is, maybe not even a question, it's more of a statement. It's, I don't think I can do anything in my yard. I have such a tiny little yard. And I cite to them an example of, I had planted a tiny little patch of milkweed at my mother's house, who lives in a neighborhood where I have looked for months and months and months, and there is no other milkweed, seems like, within miles of that place. But that little patch of milkweed was covered in Monarch butterfly larvae this spring.
That's great.
So it's sort of, it's kind of inspiring, I think, to tell that to people, to think that they can't do much. I mean, out of just such a small space. Do you have any other thoughts about what people can do that may not have a big yard or
I completely agree. That's a great example. You can put flowers for the nectar. You know, the butterflies will come and drink from that, or the few of the host plants, whether it be milkweed and like the butterfly weed is a good species of milkweed that stays small and you know, it's not kind of lanky.
The orange one.
Yeah, the one with the orange flowers. It's a really pretty plant. A lot of people grow herbs already, you know, parsley, dill, fennel, and they'll get the black swallowtail on that. You have to have enough to feed them, or another place to go, maybe give them to a friend that has parsley. The black swallowtails also eat Queen Anne's lace, so a lot of times we'll put them out on that if we run out of food. So yeah, you can definitely put in a few host plants, some nectar plants, getting a little larger. One of the best things people can do is not to spray pesticides and herbicides. You know, all these chemicals are not good for our insects, so I would reduce that. If you can reduce your lawn at all, and just add another perennial bed, or let some lawn, if you have a bigger property, let some go and just don't mow all the time. Putting in trees, like we've talked about, trees and different shrubs. Once you learn what the host plants are, or flowering, you know, trees or shrubs, for because they need the nectar and the host plants as early in the spring and all the way through the fall. You know, it's not just one season. So having a variety of annuals, perennials, trees, shrubs, and as you can see in this garden, it's not a formal garden. It doesn't have to be formal. The more you get in there and you know what to look for when you're starting to clip, you realize, uh-oh, there's a chrysalis there, or there's some little eggs there. So, you know, they prefer it, I think, the insects, if we let everything be a little more natural.
Sure, that's what they're used to.
Yeah, that's what they need. So, yeah, we have handouts if people come to visit the butterfly house. We have the host plants and the nectar plants and some hints for people, things they can do. But there's a lot of great resources online, the North American Butterfly Association and Xerces Society. There's a lot of wonderful resources for that.
Figure out what to plant maybe in your area and why, and what not to do. As you talked about going through your herbs and seeing something that may look like it doesn't belong, but again, just doing your research and before you take it out.
Right.
So
exactly.
Okay. How many? I didn't ask you this. How many different species of butterfly do you think you have in this house?
We focus on between, I'd say, 23 and 27 different species of our local butterflies and moths. Yeah.
All in this little space here.
Yeah. You know, they're not all in here at the same time. I would guess now we might have about 9 different species. So it fluctuates, and you know, probably August is when we have the most, you know, all at one time. The most caterpillars, the most butterflies. So we don't open the butterfly house until mid-June, and that's because you're not really seeing many butterflies in the environment before that. And even in mid-June into early August, July, we still don't have tons and tons of butterflies. So when the population builds, that's when you'll see a lot in here. So we're open mid-June until September 30th, I think, is our last day. So we're starting to slow down a little bit now. Monarchs are still building their population, but they're probably starting to migrate through. So they'll be getting ready to migrate to Mexico. Some have already started.
If you want to come and check out Ladew Gardens themselves, when is the season that the whole place is open?
We're open April 1st to October 31st.
Okay.
Yeah. April Fool's Day to Halloween.
That's a good way to memorize it. Gardening is like that, it seems like.
The gardens are beautiful in every season, really. And it's the same, I think, as the butterfly house. It changes like week by week. You know, there's a lot to see, and there's frogs galore and fun things all the time in the gardens.
I see right over here we got a little rabbit hopping around.
Yeah, we have a rabbit. We had a tree frog there. We have a little vole that was living here. So
always something to look at.
Always something. Yep.
Okay. Well, you guys work really hard, and it's we really appreciate you doing all this.
Yeah,
a lot of volunteer work, and
a
lot goes into this. You can tell.
Volunteers are great. Yeah. Well, thank you.
So thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure.
So once again, I'd like to thank Sue Myers and all the wonderful people at Ladew Gardens. If you're ever in the Mid-Atlantic area and you want something cool to see, this is a must-do. Check out ladewgardens.com for more information. Awesome place.